The private dining room at the grill overlooked Park Avenue, its wood-paneled walls and dim lighting creating a cocoon of exclusivity that had hosted countless power lunches and discreet negotiations over the decades. Alexander Blackwood sat across from Marcus Chen, his oldest friend and most trusted advisor, watching as the attorney methodically dissected the plan he'd just outlined. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Marcus said, setting down his whiskey with deliberate care. "You've met this woman twice." "Three times," Alexander corrected. "Three times," Marcus continued, unperturbed, "and you're planning to propose a fraudulent marriage to circumvent your grandfather's will." Alexander's jaw tightened at the word fraudulent. It's not fraud if both parties enter into it with full knowledge and consent. "The trustees might disagree," Marcus countered, "as would your grandfather if he were alive." "My grandfather is precisely why we're having this conversation." Alexander's voice remained even, but there was steel beneath the surface. "He created this situation, Marcus, not me." The waiter appeared with their entrees, Dover sole for Alexander, steak for Marcus, and they fell silent until he departed, closing the heavy door behind him. "Have you considered the alternatives?" Marcus asked, cutting into a steak with surgical precision. "We could challenge the will on discriminatory grounds. Times have changed since it was written." "And drag the Blackwood name through a very public legal battle?" Alexander shook his head. "The foundation's work would suffer. The partnerships we've built would be strained. And there's no guarantee we'd win. So instead, you'll marry a woman you barely know and hope the trustees don't see through the charade?" Marcus's skepticism was palpable. "Alexander, this is reckless, even for you." Alexander set down his fork, meeting his friend's gaze directly. "I've thought this through, Marcus. Olivia Rosario is intelligent, independent, and discreet. She understands what I'm proposing and why." "And what exactly are you proposing?" Marcus pressed. "A business transaction disguised as a marriage? A temporary arrangement until you secure your inheritance. Have you considered what happens if she decides the terms aren't favorable enough halfway through? That's why I need you to draft an ironclad prenuptial agreement," Alexander replied. "One that protects both of us." Marcus leaned back, studying his oldest friend. "This isn't just about the money, is it? You could walk away from the Blackwood fortune tomorrow and still live comfortably on your own investments." Alexander was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the rain-streaked windows. "It's about the foundation," he said finally. "The youth programs, the community initiatives, the scholarships, they all depend on the trust. If I lose control of that money, my grandfather's trustees will redirect it to their own priorities." "Conservative causes," Marcus nodded, understanding. "The old guard." "Exactly." Alexander's voice hardened. "Everything my father fought against. Everything I've been working to change." Marcus sighed, recognizing the determination in his friend's eyes. "And what about Olivia? What does she get out of this arrangement?" "Financial security. Freedom to pursue her career without worrying about making rent. Resources to help her family." Alexander paused. "And a partner who respects her independence." "A partner who's living a lie," Marcus pointed out, "who's asking her to live one too." Alexander's expression tightened. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent years trying to find another way?" His voice dropped, the frustration he usually kept carefully contained breaking through. "This isn't what I wanted, Marcus. But it's the hand I've been dealt." Marcus watched his friend, concern evident in his eyes. They'd known each other since boarding school, had been roommates at Yale, had navigated the complexities of wealth and privilege together. He'd been there when Alexander had first acknowledged his sexuality, when he'd faced his grandfather's thinly veiled disapproval, when he'd chosen to live in the shadows rather than risk losing everything. "Have you told her everything?" Marcus asked quietly. "About the trustees' expectations? About the scrutiny you'll both face?" "I've tried to," Alexander said, "but I want her to hear it from you as well. As my attorney, not my friend." She deserves to understand exactly what she'd be agreeing to. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll meet with her, and I'll be honest about the risks. I wouldn't expect anything less. Alexander's lips curved in a faint smile. That's why I trust you. And what about trust between you and Olivia? Marcus challenged. A marriage, even one of convenience, requires it. Alexander's expression grew thoughtful. I think it's possible. There's something about her, Marcus, a directness, an integrity. When we were in Washington Heights, she showed me her world without apology or pretense. I respect that. Respect isn't the same as trust, Marcus pointed out. It's a start, Alexander counted, more than I've had with anyone in a long time. Marcus sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of his friend's jaw. You've made up your mind. I have. Alexander's voice was firm. But I need your help to do this right. To protect both Olivia and myself. And if she says no? Marcus asked. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then I'll find another solution. But I believe she'll say yes. Based on what? 3 meetings and a shared appreciation for Dominican food. Marcus couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. Based on the look in her eyes when I explained what the Foundation's work means to me, Alexander replied. She understands purpose, Marcus. And sacrifice. Marcus studied his friend, recognizing the quiet determination that had always defined him, the same determination that had helped him survive his mother's death, his father's estrangement, his grandfather's manipulation. For all his privilege, Alexander Blackwood had never had an easy path. All right, Marcus said finally. I'll draft the agreements. I'll meet with Ms. Rosario. But Alexander, he leaned forward, his expression serious. Be certain this is what you want. 5 years is a long time to live a lie. I've been living one my entire life, Alexander replied quietly. At least this one serves a purpose I believe in. Olivia sat curled on the edge of her bed, knees hugged to her chest, the faded quilt bunched beneath her. The hum of the city filtered through the cracked window, car horns, distant laughter, the steady drip of rain against the fire escape. She stared at the ceiling, tracing the water stain that looked, tonight, like a question mark. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She ignored it. She'd already silenced 3 calls from Carmen and a text from her brother, all asking if she was okay. She wasn't sure how to answer. The proposal replayed in her mind, looping like a stubborn melody. 5 years. $2 million. Security for her family. A life she'd never dared to imagine. But at what cost? She pressed her forehead to her knees, breathing in the scent of laundry detergent and cafe con leche from the kitchen below. Her abuela's radio played a bolero, the melody sweet and mournful. Olivia's chest ached with longing, for certainty, for the comfort of old routines, for a world where choices were simple. What would her parents say? Her mother, fierce and practical, would want her to take the deal to build something lasting for Miguel and Abuela. Her father, the dreamer, would warn her not to lose herself in someone else's story. She closed her eyes, letting the city's sounds fill the silence. The radiator ticked. A siren wailed, then faded. Somewhere, a neighbor's laughter rose and fell, a reminder that life went on, indifferent to her turmoil. Could she live a lie, even for the right reasons? Could she share her life with a man she barely knew, even if he offered respect and understanding? Would the money change her, or would it finally set her free? Her heart thudded, heavy with hope and dread. She wanted to believe in Alexander's sincerity, in the possibility of partnership without love. She wanted to believe she could do this and still be herself. But doubt pressed in, sharp and insistent. What if she failed? What if she lost herself, or worse, let her family down? The rain tapped harder at the window, as if urging her to decide. Olivia wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and let out a shaky breath. Tomorrow, she would meet Alexander. Tonight, she would let herself feel the weight of the choice, every hope, every fear, every possibility. She whispered a prayer to the quiet room, then lay back, letting the city's lullaby carry her toward uneasy sleep. The rain fell in sheets across Manhattan the next morning, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected light. Olivia stared out the window of her small apartment in Washington Heights, watching water cascade down the glass, distorting the view of fire escapes and brick facades across the street. Her notebook lay open beside her, filled with lists, pros and cons, questions and concerns, all centered around Alexander Blackwood's impossible proposal. A marriage of convenience. $500 million at stake. Financial security for her family. The freedom to live her own life beneath the veneer of a socially acceptable union. It sounded like the plot of one of the telenovelas her abuela loved, too dramatic to be real, too tempting to dismiss. The gentle knock on her bedroom door pulled her from her thoughts. "Olivia, you have a visitor." Her grandmother's voice carried a note of surprise that matched Olivia's own. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not in this downpour. When she opened her door, her abuela gave her a questioning look. "There's a very handsome man in our living room. Very elegant. Says he needs to speak with you." Olivia's heart skipped. "Did he give a name?" "Alexander Blackwood." Her grandmother's eyebrows rose significantly. "The same one from that fancy party you wrote about?" "Dios mío, Olivia. What have you gotten yourself into?" "Nothing, abuela. It's just work." The lie tasted strange on her tongue. She'd never been good at keeping secrets from her grandmother. Alexander stood when she entered the living room, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at ease among her family's worn furniture and cherished mementos. His charcoal suit was immaculate despite the rain, his presence transforming the modest space. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice low, "but I realized there were things I didn't explain properly. Things you should know before you make any decision." Olivia nodded toward the door. "Let's talk outside." They ended up at a small Dominican cafe 2 blocks away, the kind of place where the coffee came strong and sweet, and the owners knew every regular by name. It wasn't the Metropolitan Museum gala, but the anonymity felt safer than the scrutiny of her abuela's perceptive gaze. "Your family seems lovely," Alexander said as they settled into a corner booth. "Your grandmother reminds me a little of my mother." "You never mentioned your mother before," Olivia noted, wrapping her hands around her steaming mug. A shadow crossed his face. "She died when I was 14. Aneurysm." It was sudden. Olivia recognized the careful neutrality in his voice, the same tone she used when speaking of her own parents' deaths. "I'm sorry," she said simply. He acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. "Thank you. But I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here because I realized I wasn't completely forthcoming with you." Olivia steeled herself. Here it came, the catch, the deal breaker, the reason this all seemed too good to be true. "Go on." Alexander took a breath. "You should understand exactly what you'd be getting into. My grandfather's will doesn't just require marriage. It requires a proper marriage, by his definition. That means appearing in public together, attending family events, living in the same home." "I assumed as much," Olivia said carefully. "There's more." Alexander's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the table. "The trust is overseen by a board. They take their duty to uphold my grandfather's wishes very seriously. They'll be watching us, evaluating whether our marriage meets the requirements. So we'd be under surveillance." Olivia couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "Not exactly. But we need to be convincing." He paused. "And there's something else you should know. Something personal." Olivia waited, sensing his discomfort. "I mentioned that I'm gay," he said quietly, his eyes meeting hers directly. What I didn't explain is that I've never been comfortable with physical intimacy with women. Even the idea of it makes me. He looked away, searching for words. It's not just preference, it's visceral. I can manage performances for public consumption, holding hands, a kiss on the cheek, but anything more. He shook his head. Olivia processed this. So it would be completely platonic. Yes, the relief in his voice was palpable. Absolutely platonic. We would have separate bedrooms, separate personal lives. I would never expect or want anything physical from you. And that's the catch? Olivia couldn't help a small smile. That you don't want to sleep with me? A surprised laugh escaped him. When you put it that way, it does sound absurd. It's actually refreshing, she said honestly. Most men I meet can't separate my value from my body. You're offering a partnership based on mutual benefit rather than other expectations. Exactly. Alexander leaned forward, earnest now. We could build something valuable together. Your perspective on the world, your insights, they could transform the foundation's work. And you'd have resources to pursue your own projects, support your family. And if I want a relationship with someone else, Olivia asked bluntly, you'd be free to have one. Discretion would be essential, of course. But I'd never ask you to deny yourself companionship or fulfillment. He cleared his throat. I won't pretend this arrangement is normal or easy. But I respect you, Olivia. I wouldn't ask if I thought it would make you miserable. Olivia studied him, trying to read past the polished surface. There's still something you're not telling me. Alexander hesitated, then nodded. The trustees. They're traditional. They expect children from proper marriages. Olivia felt her eyebrows rise. Children? Not immediately, he clarified quickly. The will gives us time, 5 years. But eventually, yes, they would expect us to start a family. And if we don't, we'd need a compelling reason. Medical issues, perhaps. They wouldn't push if it seemed insensitive. Olivia shook her head, incredulous. This gets more complicated by the minute. I know, Alexander acknowledged. And I'm sorry. But I wanted you to have all the information before you decide. They sat in silence for a moment, the rain pattering against the windows, the cafe's bustling atmosphere a counterpoint to the weight of their conversation. Can I ask you something personal? Olivia finally said. Alexander nodded. How long have you known? About yourself, I mean. His expression softened slightly. Since I was 13. But I've never been able to fully live that truth. My grandfather, he was a man of his generation. When my father tried to introduce more progressive ideas into the company, they had a falling out. My grandfather essentially disowned him. I was raised between two worlds, my father's principles and my grandfather's expectations. And which shaped you more? Olivia asked. Alexander considered this. Both, in different ways. I learned to navigate systems from my grandfather. I learned what really matters from my father. He paused. That's why the foundation is so important to me. It's where I can honor both legacies, use the Blackwood resources to create meaningful change. Olivia understood then why he was willing to enter into this charade. It wasn't just about money. It was about purpose, about continuing work that mattered. One last question, she said. Why me? There must be dozens of women in your social circle who would jump at this offer. That's precisely why, Alexander replied. They want the Blackwood name, the status, the wealth. You. You didn't even ask about the money until we were halfway through our discussion. You asked about autonomy, about the foundation's work, about personal freedom. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Olivia considered his words. It was true. The financial aspects, while tempting, weren't what intrigued her most. It was the possibility of doing more with her life than simply surviving from one paycheck to the next. The chance to make a difference on a scale she'd never imagined possible. I still need time, she said finally. Of course, Alexander agreed. This isn't a decision to rush. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. My private number. Call me when you've decided, either way. As they prepared to leave, Olivia felt the weight of the choice before her. Alexander, she said, whatever I decide, thank you for being honest. He paused, his expression unreadable. I've had enough lies in my life, Olivia. If we're going to do this, honesty has to be our foundation. The rain had eased to a gentle drizzle as they stepped outside. Alexander opened an umbrella and offered to walk her home, but Olivia declined, needing space to think. She watched him disappear into a waiting car, then turned toward her apartment, her mind racing. The arrangement was unconventional, complicated, fraught with potential pitfalls. Yet it also offered solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable just days ago. Her brother's education, her abuela's medical bills, the freedom to write stories that mattered rather than chase freelance assignments to pay rent. And beneath it all, the gnawing question, could she live a lie, even if it was a mutually beneficial one? The next morning, Olivia found herself in an unfamiliar part of Manhattan, standing before a gleaming skyscraper that housed one of the city's most prestigious law firms. She'd barely slept, her mind churning with questions that needed answers before she could make her decision. Questions that required expertise beyond her own. The receptionist directed her to the 42nd floor, where Marcus Chen, Alexander's attorney, was waiting. Alexander had arranged the meeting at Olivia's request, a chance for her to understand the legal implications of what she was considering. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Marcus Chen rose as she entered, extending his hand with a professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Rosario, a pleasure to meet you. His voice was smooth, his handshake firm. Alexander speaks highly of you. Thank you for seeing me, Olivia replied, taking the seat across from him. The polished conference table between them reflected the city skyline, creating the illusion that they were floating above Manhattan. Marcus opened a leather portfolio. Alexander mentioned you have questions about the arrangement he's proposed. I've prepared some documents that outline the basic terms, but I'm happy to address any specific concerns. Olivia nodded, grateful for his directness. I want to understand exactly what I'd be agreeing to. Legally, financially, and in terms of my obligations. A prudent approach, Marcus said, sliding a document across the table. This is a preliminary draft of the prenuptial agreement. It establishes the financial terms Alexander discussed with you, the trust in your name, access to joint accounts, and the settlement upon dissolution of the marriage. Olivia scanned the document, her journalistic training helping her navigate the legal terminology. The figures made her breath catch: $2 million in an irrevocable trust, established on their wedding day. An additional $5 million after 5 years of marriage. Monthly allowances of $15,000 that exceeded her annual salary. And my obligations? She asked, looking up. Marcus's expression remained neutral. To maintain the appearance of a genuine marriage. To reside in Alexander's home. To attend social and business functions as his wife. To refrain from any public behavior that might suggest the marriage is unconventional. And if I want out before the 5 years are up, you would retain the initial trust, Marcus said, but forfeit the additional settlement. There are also confidentiality provisions,